In the treacherous waters of the Indian Ocean, where piracy has become a ruthless business, a group of Somali pirates made a deadly mistake. They set their sights on what they thought would be an easy target, a merchant ship, vulnerable and slow-moving. But their plan quickly spiraled out of control when they realized the ship they had attacked was not just any vessel. It was the USS Bainbridge, one of the U.S. Navy's most formidable destroyers. Armed to the teeth and with over 300 sailors on board, the USS Bainbridge was no ordinary target. This warship was built for combat, with cutting-edge technology and weapon systems capable of sinking entire fleets in a matter of moments. The pirates, armed with nothing more than small firearms and a flimsy boat, had just made a fatal mistake. As the pirates closed in, they realized too late that they had picked the wrong ship. The USS Bainbridge immediately went into defense mode. What was supposed to be a typical hijacking had now turned into a showdown between the U.S. Navy and a group of pirates who had no idea what they had just walked into.
The Somali pirates had been operating in these waters for years, taking advantage of the chaos that plagued Somalia's coast. With no functional government, piracy had become a profitable, albeit dangerous business. They would target slow-moving merchant ships, hold the crew hostage, and demand millions in ransom. To them, it was a simple formula: easy money, minimal risk. But today was different. The pirates had been following the USS Bainbridge for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They underestimated the ship's speed, its defensive capabilities, and most of all, the sheer force the U.S. Navy could bring to bear. As their small, heavily armed boat approached, the pirates thought they could quickly board the ship, overpower the crew, and seize the vessel for ransom. The plan was simple, reckless, and doomed from the start. They tried to cut off the Bainbridge's escape routes, positioning themselves alongside the massive warship ready to board. But the pirates soon found themselves in a fight they weren't prepared for, one that would not only put their lives at risk, but change the course of their entire operation. As the pirates closed in, they realized their mistake. The USS Bainbridge wasn't just another target to be seized. It was a fortress on the water, a symbol of the United States military might. Once the pirates made their move, the crew of the Bainbridge responded instantly. The warship's crew didn't panic. They'd been trained for this moment.
The Navy's state-of-the-art systems locked onto the pirate skiff, tracking its every movement. The destroyer's radar systems painted a clear picture of the pirates' approach. Within seconds, the Bainbridge activated its defensive protocols, broadcasting loud, aggressive warnings to the pirates. But the desperate men on board the skiff ignored the warnings, pushing forward, armed with assault rifles and rocket-propelled grenades. As the pirates approached the warship, the Bainbridge's crew initiated a series of non-lethal deterrents. Water cannons fired powerful jets of water, forcing the pirate boat to slow down. But the pirates, still undeterred, tried to press forward. It was a clear signal. The U.S. Navy was ready to defend itself at any cost. And then, as the pirates made one final reckless attempt to board, the USS Bainbridge made its move. As the pirates closed in, their boat began to slow under the relentless pressure of the water cannons. But they refused to retreat. Desperation turned to defiance. They had come too far to back down now. With their guns drawn and their eyes locked on the massive destroyer, they launched their final desperate attempt to seize the USS Bainbridge. That's when the first shots rang out. The pirates, now dangerously close, opened fire. They aimed at the crew, but their small arms were no match for the Bainbridge's heavily armored hull. Still, the gunfire was a clear signal. This was no longer a simple hijacking. The pirates were willing to kill for their prize. The U.S. Navy crewmen immediately returned fire with mounted machine guns, disabling the pirates' boat, then forcing them to retreat. But the pirates weren't backing off that easily. They fired again, this time aiming for the bridge of the Bainbridge. It was a deadly standoff, pirates against the full force of the U.S. Navy. The ship's crew was well trained, and they were determined to protect the ship and its crew at all costs. The battle was intensifying. The pirates, now realizing that their assault wasn't going as planned, began to make a quick retreat. But the USS Bainbridge wasn't letting them off that easily. The ship's crew, trained for high-stakes operations like this, wasn't about to let a small band of pirates escape. The chase was on. With precision and speed, the Bainbridge activated its pursuit systems, tracking the pirate's skiff as it tried to flee. The destroyer's engines roared to life, and it rapidly closed the gap. The pirates' small boat, battered by gunfire and struggling under the weight of their failed attack, was no match for the massive warship. As the pirates scrambled to make a getaway, the U.S. Navy deployed its own tactical teams, prepared for any move. The pirates were trapped. They had nowhere to run. Within moments, Navy forces surrounded them, closing in from every angle. Their escape routes were cut off, their plan completely unraveled. The pirate skiff, now immobilized and helpless, became a sitting target as Navy snipers took control of the situation. It was over. The pirates had been outmaneuvered, outgunned, and captured by the very ship they had thought they could hijack. The pirates, now caught in their own trap, had no choice but to surrender. With the USS Bainbridge's snipers keeping a deadly watch, there was nowhere for them to go. The pirates' bold assault had turned into an utter failure, and they were forced to abandon any hope of escaping with their lives or their prize.
As Navy personnel boarded the pirates' vessel, the magnitude of the pirates' mistake became apparent. They hadn't just attacked a merchant ship, they had attacked a heavily armed destroyer with one of the most experienced naval forces in the world. The pirates were quickly taken into custody, and the ship's crew started securing the area. The situation had ended swiftly, but the significance was not lost on anyone. What had begun as a daring attack on the U.S. Navy turned into a massive display of military superiority. The pirates, who had once terrorized the seas, now realized the true power of the forces they had so foolishly chosen to challenge. As the pirates were escorted off the ship and taken for interrogation, the crew of the USS Bainbridge took a collective breath. The battle was over, but the question remained: how many more pirates were out there, still underestimating the power of the U.S. Navy? The aftermath of the attack rippled far beyond the waters of the Indian Ocean. News of the pirates' failure spread quickly, sending a clear message to the world: don't mess with the U.S. Navy. But it wasn't just the pirates who took notice. International maritime organizations and governments around the world now had a stark reminder of the ongoing threat that piracy posed to global trade. Piracy off the coast of Somalia had been a serious problem for decades, with the threat of attacks on merchant vessels, international trade routes, and innocent lives. But the defeat of the pirates who dared to challenge the USS Bainbridge was a turning point. It was a reminder of just how far piracy had evolved, and how much farther the U.S. Navy was willing to go to protect not just its ships, but global shipping lanes. Nations around the world, especially those with critical trade routes through these waters, began to reconsider their counter-piracy strategies. They increased cooperation with international forces like the Combined Maritime Forces, and naval patrols in high-risk areas were ramped up. The message was clear: no one was above the law, and piracy would no longer be tolerated. But while the pirates were caught, the question remained: could this battle be the end, or was it just the beginning of an even greater fight? While the pirates who attacked the USS Bainbridge were swiftly defeated, their fate highlighted a much larger problem that persisted across the seas. Piracy in the Horn of Africa and beyond had been a deadly menace for decades, costing millions in ransom payments and disrupting global trade. The attack on the Bainbridge was not just an isolated event, it was part of a larger, more complex web of piracy that thrived in the lawless waters off the Somali coast. As piracy grew, so did the tactics of the pirates. Small skiffs had become faster, better equipped, and more daring. But despite the heavy toll on shipping, the pirates weren't just motivated by greed. Desperation, political instability, and lack of opportunity fueled the rise of piracy. With no central government and a broken economy, many young Somali men saw piracy as a viable path to wealth. They targeted merchant ships, oil tankers, and even large naval vessels, hoping for a payday that would change their lives.
The question wasn't if piracy would end, it was how to stop it. Countries around the world, led by the U.S. Navy, began to ramp up efforts to tackle this growing issue. But one thing was clear: the fight was far from over. In the wake of the failed attack on the USS Bainbridge, the U.S. Navy knew that its response to piracy needed to be more than just reactive. It had to be strategic, proactive, and global in scope. The Navy, already a dominant force on the seas, began deploying new technologies and tactics to ensure that no pirate would think twice about attacking an American vessel. The first line of defense? Non-lethal deterrence.
The Navy invested in high-tech solutions like long-range acoustic devices, or LRADs, that could emit debilitating sound waves, disorienting pirates and forcing them to retreat. The Navy also relied heavily on water cannons, which could blast pirate boats into submission, stopping them in their tracks. These non-lethal methods sent a message to the pirates. The U.S. Navy had the tools to stop them, but would do so with precision, sparing lives while maintaining control of the seas.
But even with all this firepower, the question remained, would the pirates eventually adapt to these new tactics, or would they fall prey to the sheer might of the U.S. Navy? The attack on the USS Bainbridge marked the pivotal moment in the ongoing battle against piracy, but it was not the end. As the world's navies adapted to these new threats, so too did the pirates. Despite facing overwhelming military power, piracy in the Horn of Africa and beyond showed no signs of slowing down. The question remained, could the pirates continue to challenge the might of the U.S. Navy? Or was this just the beginning of a new phase in global maritime conflict? The U.S. Navy's strategic response had set a high bar, but piracy, fueled by political chaos and desperation, remained a persistent threat. Even as technology and tactics evolved, so too did the methods of pirates who were learning and adapting with every failed attempt. In response, global cooperation became increasingly crucial. Countries around the world had to come together to fight piracy, not just through military might, but through political pressure, economic sanctions, and strengthened naval patrols. The future of piracy was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The U.S. Navy would remain a dominant force on the seas, ready to protect the world's vital shipping lanes. As for the pirates, they now knew that attacking the wrong ship came with deadly consequences, and the next time, the stakes might be even higher.